somber and shuttered, waiting in patient decay for the wreckers to arrive. The Rat Man, who had been a respected building contractor until the evil rodents set out to destroy his life, loved the old houses and felt a bond with them. Like him, or so he thought, they were shamefully neglected old-timers, proud citizens of the city who, through no fault of their own, had fallen on hard times. Near the intersection of First Avenue South was a house he particularly admired, and he paused to inspect it in the soft glow of a corner gas lamp. Built of blood-red brick, the house sported a massive central tower, gaunt windows hooded with stone, porches trimmed with an extravagance of gingerbread, and the usual mansarded roof of dark slate topped with a spiky forest of iron cresting. A tall, spreading hedge, unattended for years, surrounded the property, which occupied a full quarter of a block. Although the house was now a gloomy ruin, its stained glass lost to thieves, its brick chimneys crumbling, its porches drooping like wilted flowers, it had once been the showpiece of the rambunctious young city. Known locally as the Adams House, it had in fact been built in 1870 by Charles Frederick Wellington, founder of the famed Wellington flour mills at the Falls of St. Anthony. But after the stupendous tragedy at his mighty A mill in 1878, Wellington had moved away, and the house was bought by Arthur Alonzo Adams, a legendary 5-time mayor of the city. AAA, as Adams was called, had not stayed long in the house either, for he soon died in a carriage accident on his way, so it was said, to his mistress's apartment. The house then reverted to his oldest son, who, despite becoming mayor of Minneapolis in his own right, had little use for such an ungainly antique. Some speculated that Arthur Adams, Jr., known to his friends as A.A., left the old family manse standing out of sentiment. Others, never having detected evidence of a heart beating within the mayor's broad chest, said he was simply holding out for a better price as development continued spreading south, block by block. Among many other things, the Rat Man fancied himself as the street's unofficial historian, and as he ambled along he conducted his own private tour, lecturing the appreciative air.
"Now then, the house before us was constructed in 1870, though some records suggest 1869, by Mr. Charles Frederick Wellington, one of the pioneers of Minneapolis. Mr. Wellington—"
The Rat Man's monologue was brought to a sudden halt when 3 figures unexpectedly emerged from the house's front door and onto the porch. They all appeared to be wearing dark hoods. They were also carrying a long piece of rolled-up carpet. Instinctively, the Rat Man slipped through an opening into the thick hedge and took cover, crouching as low as he could. This was a matter of self-preservation, since for all he knew the 3 figures might be ruffians of the sort who would find cruel amusement in taunting a solitary old man in the wee hours of the morning.
"Move it, Earl,"
he heard one of the figures growl in a daunting basso as the trio descended the steps from the porch and moved toward a century-old oak that spread majestically in the front yard.
"I'm doing the best I can,"
came the reply.
"Jesus, but he's heavy."
"Jesus doesn't have a thing to do with it,"
said the first man.
"Now then, let's be done with this as quickly as we can. Anybody coming our way, Jack?"
"All clear,"
said a third member of the trio, who had apparently gone out to the sidewalk to inspect the street.
"Not a soul stirring."
This, of course, was not true, since the Rat Man was no more than 20 yards away, yet so well concealed that he was just another shadow in the dim light. Once he had dropped behind the hedge, the Rat Man could no longer see the figures who had disturbed his peace and perhaps even threatened his well-being, but he could hear them, talking and grunting, and he could not help wondering what had brought them out at so late an hour in such an unlikely place.
"Roll 'em out,"
he heard the first man say, the man whose name he still had not heard. The voice was brisk, powerful, commanding. It reminded the Rat Man of the way his first sergeant had barked out orders back in the days when he was a private in the 2nd Minnesota Regiment, helping William Tecumseh Sherman lay waste to Georgia. Jack, who had a boyish voice, said,
"He's ready."
"All right, help me up."
It was the sergeant talking now.
"Hurry."
The Rat Man heard more sounds, grunting again, the rustle of leaves, the creaking of tree limbs.
"Throw me the rope,"
the sergeant ordered. There was a brief silence, then the hard clump of boots hitting the ground.
"Ready?"
the sergeant asked.
"Yeah, we got him,"
said Earl.
"Up he goes, then,"
the sergeant said.
"Pull! Pull!"
The Rat Man heard more grunting, more creaking. He couldn't imagine what